Snow drifted across the glass windows of the Silverline Rolls-Royce showroom, settling like fragile reminders of a world far gentler than the one that hardened the man now standing in the center of the polished floor. His clothes were stained with grease and dirt, his jacket torn from years of hard labor, and a heavy sack hung from his shoulder like a symbol of the life he carried, rough, unglamorous, and ignored by most. His name was Ray Marston, a garbage collector whose entire life had been defined by quiet sacrifices and long, unseen battles. But on this cold December afternoon, Ray stood straighter than he had in years, clutching a wrinkled, folded letter written in the shaky handwriting of a little girl. It was his daughter's Christmas wish, innocent, impossible, and heartbreakingly hopeful. "Daddy, one day. I want to ride in a shiny car like the ones in the movies. Even just once. If you believe kindness still exists in the world, if you believe people deserve second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means the world to us." Ray knew he had no business being inside a place where every car cost more than his entire lifetime of earnings, but he had promised his daughter, Mira, that Christmas would be special. She had been sick for months, her little body frail from the illness doctors still struggled to name. Treatments drained Ray more than the icy wind on his morning routes, yet he refused to let her light fade. When she told him her dream, her only Christmas wish, he vowed to find a way. He could not buy a Rolls-Royce, but he could at least ask about renting one for a single magical hour. But as Ray stepped deeper into the gleaming showroom, the laughter began. It echoed off marble floors and glass walls, sharp and cold, bouncing between high ceilings and glittering chandeliers. The staff, dressed in polished black suits and perfect smiles, turned their attention to the dirt-covered man like he was a stain on the floor. Their eyes lingered on the sack over his shoulder, the grime on his boots, the patches on his jacket. One woman covered her mouth, trying to hide her grin. A young salesman nudged his colleague, whispering something cruel that made both look at Ray with barely concealed amusement. Ray felt the weight of their stares. Years of humiliation had taught him to look down, to swallow pain like bitter medicine. But today was different. He lifted his gaze, tightening his grip on Myra's letter. He didn't care if they mocked him. His daughter's wish mattered more than his pride. Inside him lived a courage that only a parent's love could ignite. He walked toward the main desk where Adrian Cole, a sharply dressed sales consultant, pretended to straighten his tie while smirking. The staff gathered slightly behind him, forming a small crowd of curiosity and mischief. Snow continued to fall outside, soft and peaceful, stark contrast to the cruelty growing inside the showroom. Ray cleared his throat, steadying his voice, refusing to let the tremble of old insecurities surface. As Ray began explaining why he was there, the laughter grew louder. They were entertained by the idea of a garbage collector wanting anything to do with vehicles whose rims alone cost more than his annual income. Some shook their heads, some pointed, others chuckled openly at the absurdity. Their eyes were locked on him, filled with mockery, disbelief, and hollow superiority. But Ray continued speaking, describing Myra's dream, her illness, her fading strength, hoping that at least one person in the room would understand. Yet compassion was scarce. The showroom staff exchanged glances that said everything: this man didn't belong here. This man was a joke. And when Ray asked the cost of renting the car for an hour, Adrian's laughter burst out fully, echoing through the space like a cruel punchline. The others followed, some holding their stomachs, others wiping tears of amusement from their eyes. Ray's heart cracked, but he stood firm. Life had taught him resilience the hard way, through storms of poverty, through nights when Mira cried in pain, through days he walked miles just to save a few dollars on gas. And for her, he would not break. With a deep breath, he slowly reached into the sack on his back, not for trash, but for something far more precious. Over years of extra shifts, sleepless nights, and forgotten meals, Ray had been saving, every tip, every spare dollar, every coin he found while sorting through garbage bags at dawn. It was a quiet dream he kept hidden, to give Mira at least one moment in her life where she felt like a princess instead of a patient. One by one, bundles of cash, worn, taped, crinkled, emerged from the sack. The laughter stopped instantly. Adrian's smile froze. The women who had been pointing now stared in shock. A silence fell across the room so abrupt that even the falling snow outside seemed to pause. Ray laid the money on the desk, his hand steady, his voice calm as he asked again about renting the car, or even buying the used one in the corner if they would allow him a discount. The staff exchanged panicked looks. The pile of cash was not small, it was the kind of money that made managers nervous and prideful people ashamed. Suddenly, the dirty jacket, the sack, the worn boots, they all told a different story. This wasn't a foolish man chasing a fantasy. This was a father who had moved mountains for his daughter. And standing before them now was not someone to laugh at, but someone they could never hope to match in devotion. Before the ending, please comment below, would you ever judge someone again after hearing a story like this? The showroom manager hurried over, apologizing excessively, offering Ray options he had never been given before, his tone now dripping with desperate professionalism. But Ray didn't listen to their sudden politeness. He only cared about one thing, seeing Mira smile on Christmas morning. And when he finally drove the Rolls-Royce out of the showroom, slow, careful, proud, the staff watched in silence, realizing they had seen something rare, the quiet strength of a parent's love. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us spread more real, emotional stories that remind the world what kindness truly looks like. Ray drove into the snowy streets that night, not as a garbage collector, not as a man mocked for his clothes, but as a father who proved that love can outshine judgment, and that the greatest wealth lies not in pockets, but in the sacrifices we make for those we cherish.